The sounds. The sounds of tires on dirt. The silence as you glide through the air. The birds chirping in the trees. The rustle of the leaves as the wind blows by. Tranquility amidst chaos. Mountain biking evokes a feeling that is unique to everyone that participates in it. But what is mountain biking like in St. Louis? How do the people who create the trails, the people who ride them, and those who are inspiring the next generation of riders all connect? In this documentary, find out how the St. Louis mountain bike community is connected in more ways than one, and how without all the pieces of the puzzle, mountain biking wouldn't exist here. The dirt we ride. What do you love about mountain biking?
The biggest thing I love about mountain biking is it kind of helps me let go of everything in the world. My eyes are just focused on the trail right ahead of me. I'm not thinking about anything else. It's just me and nature, and it's a really beautiful thing for me. Hey, my name's Jens. I've been riding for about 15 years.
Jens is a student at St. Louis U High. He's involved in prep news, track and field, and cross country. But Jens also has a strong passion for mountain biking. He has been riding with his father ever since he was little. Jens holds a unique perspective on the development of the sport in the St. Louis area. He was also involved with GORC, an organization that builds and maintains trails in and around St. Louis. Then, how the amount of trails in St. Louis changed over the time that you've been riding?
Well, something they've done recently, which I think is super cool, Gruninger Park over in the city, they just built like a half-mile loop like in the park.
I asked Jens how he feels about the quality of the trails in St. Louis, wanting to understand how someone who rides these trails often feels about how well they are maintained.
I'd say for quality, it's really like a maintenance thing. Like especially in St. Louis with the weather we get, the upkeep has got to be like persistent. And if it's not, those trails can like fall apart pretty quickly. But the trails that are maintained, I'd say they're in great shape.
Gateway Off-Road Cyclists, or GORC, is an organization that was founded in 1998 by cyclists in St. Louis. Their mission has been to expand and maintain the trails in St. Louis for the over 25 years they've been active.
Yeah, I've been involved with GORC ever since I was a little kid. Some of my best childhood memories going out, building trail all day, eating sandwiches with my dad's friends. And it's really great work because you're out in nature, but this is something that, people are going to use on a regular basis. I think one of my favorite parts of being involved in that community is when I'm riding a trail, sometimes I'll say, oh, I remember building this corner with my dad 10 years ago or whatever.
Riders need trails and areas to participate in the sport, and without those trails, the number of mountain bikers in St. Louis would be little to none. But these trails don't just appear on their own. I sat down with the Director of Parks and Recreation of St. Charles to talk about the work his department has been doing to expand the biking infrastructure in St. Louis.
Ryan Graham, R-Y-A-N, Graham, G-R-A-H-A-M. Pump track idea came around 2019. Around the year before, in 2018, we saw a real significant drop in our attendance out at Kinetic Park. At that point, it was the youth activity park. So we saw our attendance drop from like 13,000 annual attendance in 2017 down to about 6,500 in a year. And so we started thinking, well, what's the reason for this? And we kind of landed on that since the park opened in 2005, we hadn't really done a lot. We started doing some research and finally landed on this idea of a pump track. And in all honesty, we didn't really know much about it really at the time. Just sort of thought, well, this kind of is cool. We watched a bunch of videos and saw some Red Bull things and stuff like that. And we're like, well, maybe we can do this. We have a tendency to try to go big in St. Charles over here. So when we were building this, basically, I asked them, I said, what was the biggest pump track in the area? And they told me, and I said, make it like 5,000 square foot bigger. And so at the point, we had the largest the pump track in the nation. The pump track since we've opened it, and we opened it around 2020, 2021, I believe. it's been really popular. We've hosted 2 Red Bull events out there, national competitions.
I asked Ryan why St. Charles County is so interested in growing this sport, and what is so important about getting people outdoors. St. Charles County has 22 parks totaling over 4,000 acres of land. There's more than enough room to create trails and amenities for residents and tourists alike.
People that are outdoors and, they're kayaking, they're biking, they're going places to do this.
Yeah.
And so, obviously like Bentonville, Arkansas is like the mecca of mountain biking. We're never going to be Bentonville, Arkansas. We're never going to have Walmart money and support, but there's no reason to say that we couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as Bentonville. And so, we've kind of started to look at different ways to draw some of those mountain biking riders that are either heading south to Bentonville or west to Colorado or whatever. We're situated right in the middle of the United States. So if you're on these trips, why not come here and check out the pump track and go ride some of these other trails and stuff that we developed? I think, getting people out in the nature and biking and hiking, doing all the things that they can do, it's good for everyone. The community becomes healthier. They're more aware of their neighborhoods. Getting them out in the nature, it's essential. And so I'd encourage anyone that parks departments around to look to bring in mountain bike trails or pump tracks or whatever you can do to get kids and people out off of their phones and outdoors. It's worthwhile doing. So I think it's just a matter of one, getting the funding to be able to do it, and then making it happen. I mean, none of these things are hard to do. I think it's just a matter of convincing the leadership or getting buy-in, that you want to add these things in here. They're still doing races, and there's a youth component now with was it NICA, I think is what it's called, and that's huge right now, to the point to where we hosted a few NICA races, and it's grown to where our parks can't even support the size and the number of people that are coming out for them.
Chris Milski and Annie Schwartz founded the Missouri Interscholastic Cycling League to give kids the opportunity to ride together and to compete in the sport they love. Middle and high schoolers all around St. Louis can now come together to ride in teams, as well as grow as riders and people.
Virginia back in 2012. That's when I first heard about NICA. They did a WebEx. I was at a conference, how to get more kids on bikes. Again, I was there really just trying to recruit and bring the next kid Owen to college, and heard about NICA and drank the Kool-Aid almost immediately. Kept them on my radar for about 3-4 years, and then stepped away from Lindenwood in 2015-16 season to start the Missouri League. So.
My name is Annie Schwartz, and I've been riding for most of my life, probably close to 30 years.
Yeah, my name is Chris Waleski. I'm same thing with Annie. I'm pretty much riding my whole life, so enjoy riding all types of different bikes. So, yeah.
NICA's core values are fun, inclusivity, equity, respect, and community. I asked Chris and Annie how important these values are to developing a conducive environment where riders of all skills can come together.
It's really important. I think when we first launched the Missouri League, you're gonna get, we always say the low-hanging fruit are all the kids that are already mountain biking. But what happens with these leagues, and especially with the Missouri League over the last few years, that we've grown and gotten into community spaces that what we would consider to be non-traditional mountain bikers, and everybody that comes into the family just brings different culture, different perspective.
We've really seen that impact on other local events where there used to be 1 or 2 kids at most showing up to any sort of local grassroots event, whether it was a race, road, mountain bike, a community ride, everything. Now all of a sudden they're overrun with juniors, and it's really fun to watch.
Chris and Annie explained that while they love seeing their athletes ride, they also love seeing them come out to trail builds.
But also putting the work back in to make sure that those trails are well maintained. And, I just remember going to Gork events even just 5-6 years ago, and it was a healthy number of people there. But what we've really seen since the NICA League has grown is now we get these kiddos out there and they work so hard. And we get compliments from Gork all the time. And a lot of times they've got more kids than tools at some of these events. So
Annie told me that one of her student athletes did an interview recently where he talked about what being at a NICA event was like.
His favorite part of the whole experience, coming from a swimming background, things like that, that in swimming, it's, you know, you're on a team, but maybe your teammates cheer for you. But when you go to a mountain bike race, absolutely everybody there is cheering for you, whatever team they're on, parent, coach, other student. Like, it's such a cool thing to experience. That
you'll go to a race. I know I've been to them. I'm sure Annie has too, where, you know, maybe, you know, towards the end, the last riders coming in, they start breaking down early. And so you cross the finish line and there's like one person standing there cheering for you, you know? And so we have a very, very strict policy in our league that nothing in the venue comes down until that last student athlete's off the course, and everybody's at the finish line and they're cheering and there's horns and, you know, whistling and screaming. And it's such a great family atmosphere.
The cost of mountain biking is often a high barrier to entry for a lot of young riders. Mountain bikes can cost anywhere from $750 all the way up to $15,000 for top-of-the-line rides. I asked Chris and Annie how they combat this and what programs they have in place to lower the cost of entry into the sport.
Super unique is that, you know, you'll have a student athlete say grow 6 inches over the winter time and outgrow their bike. And so we've got kind of an internal, you know, process where, you know, they'll put that bike out there for sale. They'll mark it way down for that next student athlete. So we've got a really nice sort of, you know, pass it down system within our league. And so, you know, I think we definitely have never.
Chris and Annie's continued efforts to grow NICA have resulted in over 700 riders across 12 high schools in the St. Louis area. I asked them what they hope the future of NICA will look like and how that growth will continue in the coming years.
And honestly, I would love personally to see it. I would like it to be adopted in all of our local schools, just like lacrosse and ice hockey is a club sport. I think we've done a really great job to this point, even in year 6, to get into a lot of the local schools. And I hope that continues to grow. I think where I would be most proud is in 5 and 10 years, if everybody knew what Missouri NICA was, if everybody knew that youth mountain biking was here to stay and it's a big part of our culture. And it definitely gives those non-traditional ball sport kids, you know, you have your kids that play ball sports and you have a lot of kids that don't, right? And my son's one of them, and it gives him an opportunity to be part of a community, you know, even though he doesn't play sports. So, yeah.
St. Louis's mountain biking population includes not only people who view mountain biking as a hobby, but also those who dedicate part of their lives to growing the sport and maintaining the trails that we all love to ride. It takes volunteers, government officials, as well as the riders themselves for mountain biking to have a heartbeat here. These people are the ones pioneering change in what is a rapidly growing sport and even industry, as mountain bikes continue to fly off the shelves at local bike shops. And while this documentary brought light to some stories of those growing the sport, there are hundreds of others writing their own stories as they grow mountain biking in their own unique ways.